I distinctly remember the greenish waves on the beach and the way the sand sparkled just at the edges, with shells swirling as the tide came in, the way little birds nimbly skipped away from the water as it surged up the hot sand. I was reclining very comfortably in a raft that looked like a seat with a headrest, my tanned feet with a tangerine toe polish dangling lazily in the water. And I vowed to remember this perfect memory just for days like this morning when the ice is coating things and the wind blows gusts of snowy particles that sting my cheek. I had this great plan to remember the hot summer and the little shiny pebbles and the sun on my arms, as if that would help. As if just the memory of sand and of fresh pineapple would somehow warm me. But the truth is, if I spent my life on a beach, I suppose I would long for fresh snow, for jingle bells, for icicles twinkling in the sun. Perhaps memories and future hopes go hand in hand in the circle of life. The circle of life of birth and growth and a life spent until the twilight comes seems to us a natural pattern. But sometimes that pattern is interrupted. When I was young, we had a little dog. She was black and white, and her name was Midnight. And she was expecting that summer, and I waited with excitement to see the puppies. We lived at that time in the dry desert part of Arizona, where the ground was so dry that the rainwater would rush across the cracked ground, ran into gullies and culverts, and flow quickly away before it could do the ground much good at all. And this afternoon was one of those sudden, violent rain showers, rain falling heavily, the thunder rolling. And my dog appeared at the back door. Her coat was wet. She was whining in agony. Her sides were obviously slimmer than they had been that morning. She obviously wanted us to follow her. And so my two brothers and I ran out into the storm, and her crying just broke my heart. She led us straight to a large pipe that ran under the dirt road, a pipe that was almost always dry. It must have seemed a fine shelter to her, a cool, safe, quiet place to have her puppies, but the quick downpour filled the pipe. She must have escaped, and she stood there begging us to help her puppies, but of course it was too late. And as the water receded, she went into the pipe, and one by one she brought out the tiny babies, laying them on the ground and licking them. She just could not understand that they were gone, and she could not be consoled. We buried the little ones, and we brought her home, drying her coat with towels. And we had to hold her down to keep her from rushing back to the pipe. And then something precious happened. She had the last of her litter, a runt, so tiny and delicate, and he was black and white, just like her. She immediately was comforted, snuggling close to the little one, and she was able to rest at last. And we named the little puppy Noah because he was saved from the flood. A friend of mine named Steve wrote this: "The dark night too shall pass away, The long struggle will come to an end. No matter how difficult any moment in your life may seem, it is always just that, a moment, a season of trouble that rises up like a storm, but it will spend its energy and drift away. Do not be afraid that hardship is forever. Don't despair that you have forgotten how to laugh. The power of love is stronger than sorrow. The healing of hope more certain than any sadness. Times of loss make us reflect that no one knows how many days we have. It makes us dwell upon the fact that life seems unfair, unequal. Yet we try to capture time. We try to make sense of it all. Sometimes we take the path of strict control, thinking we can make order of chaos. And sometimes we hide from parts of life that are uncomfortable. And that reminds me of my grandfather, John Magnusson, born in Iceland. I don't remember him as a warm man or a man good with children. He seemed to see right through me, not able to comprehend my 6-year-old self. He lived in an apartment in North Dakota. After his wife had passed away, he lived alone. He loved mechanical things. He loved order, and he seemed to view too much emotion as frivolous. I have a picture of his apartment, the walls full of ticking clocks, a workroom, a work table right in the center of his living room where he repaired beautiful timepieces of all varieties, rows of well-oiled clocks polished with care. He must have loved the finely tuned gears, the springs coiled, ready to tick off the seconds, the hands marching in order, the flow of time so precisely measured. Mechanical things that could be repaired, controlled, made to function in efficiency. I only remember one visit that he made to our family. We were living in Southern California when I was 6, and the visit was so special, so unusual, that my mother used a whole roll of film to record the event. And I remember him holding my baby brother awkwardly, but when his diaper needed changing, he handed him right back to my mother. He never could remember our names, and I often saw him bewildered as 7 children in that noisy household revolved around him. He didn't tell stories, he didn't like to cuddle, and he didn't seem interested in play. Most of his intention involved the golf cart that my father was building. It must have been a relief to him to return to his world of precise, ordered, mechanical precision, to return to problems solved as simply as a new spring, an adjusted weight, a pendulum finely balanced, the quiet ticking of clocks, rows of clocks, the ticking that could be predicted, controlled. It seems to me that some people wall themselves off. They take care of themselves and no one else as a way, I suppose, of risking hurt, risking any need to help. But to me, life is too difficult not to help. This is from a young adult translation of the Bible. Jesus speaking of the little ones. And it says, "But if you give them a hard time, bullying or taking advantage of their simple trust, you'll soon wish that you hadn't. You'd be better off dropped in the middle of the lake with a millstone around your neck." But my question is, why does it seem that this scripture is so seldom taken literally? It seems to me that some people take no thought for how they insult, hurt, cause to despair people that they perceive to be different than they are, with different beliefs. It's one of the scriptures that I don't mind taking literally. Just before Christmas, I brought my youngest daughter to see my new business, and as we walked across the parking lot, she was just skipping across the icy puddles, doing a little dance to avoid the slushy and cold water. She looked so cute in her boots. And I finally asked her why she was doing that. But my daughter, newly graduated from college and with only a part-time job, said, "Well, Mom, I'm just trying not to get my feet wet." She said, "My boots have holes in them." And the truth is, I would have given her the boots off my own feet if that was all that I had to give. But I had a pair of boots that I was going to give her for Christmas, and I gave them to her early. As parents, you do anything you can to fill in the cracks until she finds a job of people who are willing to give her full time. The store that she works at only hires people for part-time so they avoid benefits. We try to fill the cracks with a tank of gas, a bag of groceries. And 2 weeks ago, I saw something that really touched me deeply. There was a young man, tall and gangly, probably still growing. He'd been wearing the same short jacket since cold weather started, fake leather that can't possibly be very warm, with ribbed cuffs too short for his long arms. I drove up to the McDonald's window to order coffee, and he handed me the coffee with bare hands, red as his cheeks in the cold. Each time he opened the window, the snow and cold blew in. And I asked him, are you allowed to wear gloves at work? And he said, "Oh yes, but I lent them to a friend last week and he forgot to give them back." But he said, "My shift is almost over." He said, "I've been here since 5 a.m. And I sat there in the car thinking of those chapped red hands, and I just couldn't stand it. I drove a block down the street to a pharmacy store, and I found some black gloves, flexible enough for him to work in. And I drove back and I gave them to him through the window, and he blushed bright red, even redder than his cold cheeks already were. And honestly, if that was my son, and I could not afford to buy him gloves, I sure hope someone would help. That is all that I could think about. What if that was my boy? For the times when we need help, may we accept it gracefully. When we can spare something for others, may we give it gratefully. When we can give a hug or a smile or the gift of listening, may we realize that these are not small gifts. May we make this world a better place by taking care of each other. This new year I had one resolution, which is to continue to work to scrape the icy coating that life puts upon our hearts. Icy hearts have listened to the hard knocks of life, the self-protective tricks, the "you won't hurt me again" attitudes, the scar tissue of old wounds, the pride that keeps us from each other, the facade that I can take care of myself, I don't need anyone else. I will live for myself, I will put myself first. Icy hearts shield us from pain, we think, not realizing that we are slowly freezing to death. When you do the work to begin to thaw that outer coating, you begin to see the stranger with new eyes. You see their worth. You feel their pain. You listen to stories in the checkout line. You take on the knowledge that you can't help everyone, you can't even begin to do anything but listen and sympathize, to give a hug when you can. It makes you face your own mortality, your own helplessness. But when you start, something begins to heal inside, a warmth spreading, a flower begins to bloom. You have to ignore the times that you feel awkward, the times that someone thinks you're too nice, naive, call you sweet little thing in a derisive way. For the American way is to be strong, to be independent. We don't need each other. The truth, as I see it, is that we are so connected, so needy of each other, that true justice will only come when we see each other as worthy, as necessary. And you may ask me, how long will this process take you? How far along are you? And I am taking baby steps, for my nature is to be sarcastic and realistic and to think people are kind of hopeless. And you may not have known that. But I work and I make room to grow, and I hope for a better tomorrow. A young man that I went to seminary with is now a minister serving the UU Church of Greeley in Colorado. And he wrote this prayer. He said, "Dear God, on days like this when I am not okay, or at least not as okay as I once was, days when I could care and tend and cook and serve and write and call and hug and still not be done, whether I go to bed or not, on days like this when I want to try to do everything right as best I can, and I still cannot guarantee the outcome, and I'm feeling helpless before it all. May you be there to remind me that I do this work, this hard and gritty and time-consuming work, this beautiful and sacred daily work of tending and of building and of trying and succeeding and failing, of not just birthing into this world, but also rising up and sometimes letting go. Remind me that my help is near at hand, that my help is in the warm smile of knowing. On days when it feels like I do too much alone, it seems as though all I can do is this thing that I'm doing, and all the help in the world won't speed it up. It won't bring a certainty or let me know for sure that my children will turn out all right, not until it is their time. Help me, I cry out. Help me to hold on to hope and faith and love, and help me to let go of fear and worry and anxiety, knowing I've made it all the way this far. So help me, I say, when I feel helpless. Help me to be in this day doing all that I can and caring for all that I love, including myself, that the future might unfold exactly as it needs to be. So may it be. Blessed be.